In medicine, we have protocols for everything. But on a humid August morning in 1993, a patient arrived at St. Mary's Hospital who didn't just break the protocols, she broke the laws of physics itself. I'm Dr. Michael Chen, and after 15 years in internal medicine, I thought I'd seen it all. Rare diseases, unusual presentations, medical mysteries that kept me up at night searching through journals. But nothing, absolutely nothing, prepared me for Elena Rodriguez. What started as a routine case of dehydration became something that still makes me question everything I thought I knew about the natural world. Because when your patient starts making it rain indoors, and every scientific explanation fails, you realize that some cases don't belong in medical textbooks. They belong in files marked unexplained. This is the story of the woman who brought weather inside a hospital room, and how it changed everything I believed about the boundaries between mind, body, and the impossible. Elena Rodriguez arrived on a stretcher that Tuesday morning, unconscious and dehydrated after collapsing during a thunderstorm in downtown San Antonio. 41 years old, Hispanic female, no significant medical history. Her vitals were stable but concerning. Blood pressure 90/60, heart rate 110, temperature slightly elevated at 101.2 degrees. Standard protocol for heat exhaustion and dehydration. I'd handled hundreds of similar cases during Texas summers. Start an IV, run normal saline, monitor electrolytes, observe for 24 hours. Simple, straightforward, by-the-book medicine. Angela Foster, one of our most experienced nurses, got Elena settled in room 217 on the 3rd floor. Clean room, standard setup, hospital bed, bedside table, 2 chairs for visitors, a small window overlooking the parking lot. Nothing unusual about the space itself. Elena regained consciousness around noon, groggy but responsive. She spoke softly in accented English, explaining that she'd been walking to work when the storm hit. She felt dizzy, then remembered nothing until waking up here. Classic presentation. Nothing in her story raised any red flags. I performed my standard examination. Heart sounds normal, lungs clear, neurological responses appropriate. Her skin was still slightly clammy from the dehydration, but her color was improving with the IV fluids. Temperature dropping to 100 degrees even. Everything proceeding exactly as expected. The only thing that seemed slightly off was how she kept glancing at the ceiling, as if she was listening for something. When I asked about it, she just shrugged and said the hospital felt heavy today. I attribute it to disorientation from her fainting episode. Looking back, that should have been my first clue that Elena Rodriguez was unlike any patient I'd ever treated. But at the time, I was focused on the numbers, the lab results, the concrete medical data that made sense. I had no idea that by evening, room 217 would become the site of something that would haunt me for the rest of my career. By 4 o'clock that afternoon, Elena's lab results came back normal. Her electrolytes were slightly imbalanced, but correcting nicely with the IV fluids. There was nothing to suggest any underlying pathology, and I planned to discharge her the following morning after one more set of vitals. That's when Angela Foster found me at the nurse's station, and I noticed something immediately. Her scrubs were damp. They weren't soaked, but were noticeably moist, as if she had been caught in a light mist. "Dr. Chen," she said, "could you come take a look at Mrs. Rodriguez's room? There's something unusual happening." I followed Angela down the hallway, and as we neared room 217, I felt it too, a distinct increase in humidity. The air felt thicker, almost tropical, which was strange for a hospital with industrial-grade climate control that maintained exactly 72 degrees and 45% humidity throughout the building. When we entered Elena's room, the difference was immediately apparent. The air was saturated with moisture, causing my glasses to fog slightly. The walls had a barely perceptible sheen of condensation, so fine you had to look closely to see it. "When did this start?" I asked Angela. "About an hour ago," she replied. "I came in to check her vitals, and it was like walking into a steam room, but look!" She pointed to the ceiling. No visible source, no leaking pipes, no humidifier, no explanation. My mind immediately cycled through logical possibilities. A prank by a resident? A faulty cleaning machine left behind? I examined the room systematically, my actions driven by years of protocol. I checked the ventilation grates, inspected the walls for any sign of moisture intrusion, and even looked behind Elena's bed for hidden equipment. Nothing. The humidity seemed to be emanating from nowhere. Only after exhausting every rational textbook explanation in my own head did I make the call to maintenance. I needed another set of eyes, an expert to tell me I was missing something simple. Elena herself appeared comfortable, almost serene, sitting up and reading a magazine Angela had brought her. When I asked if she felt hot or sticky, she looked puzzled. "No, doctor," she said. "Actually, I feel very good now, very calm." I called maintenance immediately. Within 30 minutes, Tom Bradley, our head engineer, arrived with humidity sensors and inspection equipment. His readings confirmed what we were experiencing. The room was maintaining 85% humidity, while the hallway outside remained at normal levels. "Never seen anything like this," Tom muttered, shaking his head. It's like there's an invisible humidifier running at full blast, but there's no machine, no water source, no explanation. Tom spent 3 hours in Elena's room that evening, testing every conceivable source of the unexplained humidity. He brought in infrared cameras to detect heat signatures, moisture meters to trace water sources, even consulted with the hospital's HVAC specialists remotely. Every test came back negative. No hidden pipes, no electrical malfunctions, no equipment producing steam or vapor. The room's climate control system was functioning perfectly. In fact, it was working overtime, trying to compensate for the mysterious moisture. By 8 p.m., something even more unsettling began to happen. Angela noticed it first during her evening rounds. "Dr. Chen, you need to see this immediately." I rushed back to room 217, and what I witnessed defied every principle of physics I'd learned in medical school. Tiny water droplets were forming in midair, approximately 3 feet above Elena's bed, not condensing from existing surfaces, actually materializing from nothing, hovering briefly, then falling like the gentlest rain. I stood transfixed, watching droplets appear and disappear in the space around Elena's bed. The phenomenon occurred in a perfect circle, roughly 6 feet in diameter, centered on her position. Step outside that invisible boundary, and the air was completely dry. Step back in, and you were in what could only be described as localized precipitation. "This is impossible," I whispered, more to myself than to Angela. Elena looked up from her magazine with a serene expression. "Is something wrong, doctor?" I didn't know how to answer that question. How do you explain to a patient that they appear to be generating weather patterns in violation of fundamental natural laws? I called Dr. Sarah Mitchell, our chief of internal medicine, and tried to describe what we were observing. The skepticism in her voice was palpable until she arrived 20 minutes later and witnessed it herself. For the first time in 30 years of practice, Dr. Mitchell was speechless. We spent the next 2 hours documenting everything: photographs, video recordings, precise measurements of the affected area. The rain wasn't constant. It seemed to ebb and flow in gentle cycles, sometimes barely perceptible, other times distinct enough to wet our clothing if we stood in Elena's room for more than a few minutes. The most disturbing aspect wasn't the impossibility of the phenomenon itself. It was Elena's complete lack of concern about it, as if she was entirely unaware that her presence was causing localized meteorological events inside a hospital room. By the third day, a pattern had emerged that made the situation even more scientifically baffling. The intensity of Elena's personal weather directly correlated with her emotional state. Angela was the first to notice the connection. During visiting hours, Elena's sister, Maria, came to see her. Elena became visibly upset when Maria mentioned financial problems at home, and within minutes, the gentle misting in the room intensified to what could genuinely be called light rain. I documented this carefully. Elena's distress level, measured subjectively from 1 to 10, seemed to have a direct relationship with the volume of precipitation in her immediate vicinity. When she was calm and content, we observed only the baseline humidity and occasional droplets. When she became emotional, the room became genuinely wet. This correlation was impossible. Meteorology doesn't work that way. Weather patterns are the result of massive atmospheric pressure systems, temperature differentials, and complex fluid dynamics. They don't respond to human emotions in a 6-foot radius around a hospital bed. Yet the evidence was undeniable. I brought in Dr. James Peterson, a meteorologist from the University of Texas, to observe and hopefully explain what we were witnessing. Dr. Peterson arrived with sophisticated atmospheric monitoring equipment, hygrometers, and barometric sensors. His initial assessment was professional skepticism, followed by complete bewilderment. The barometric pressure in Elena's room was normal. No temperature differential existed between her immediate area and the rest of the space. No electromagnetic anomalies, no unusual air currents, no detectable source of water vapor. "Dr. Chen," he said after 4 hours of intensive monitoring, "according to every instrument I have, this room should be completely dry. The physics don't support what we're observing. It's as if this woman is somehow catalyzing the spontaneous generation of water vapor from atmospheric gases." The most unsettling moment came when Dr. Peterson asked Elena directly about the phenomenon. She looked genuinely confused by his question, then said something that still gives me chills. "Oh, you mean the sadness? It's always been like this when I'm upset. I thought everyone felt the air cry when they were hurt." She had lived with this impossible ability her entire life and considered it normal. The implications of that realization began to shake my fundamental understanding of what was medically possible. On Elena's 4th night in the hospital, everything changed. What had been a localized curiosity became something that challenged my sanity as much as my scientific understanding. It started around 2 a.m. Angela was making her rounds when she discovered Elena sitting up in bed crying silently. The reason was heartbreaking. She'd received news that her mother had suffered a stroke in Mexico and might not survive. Within 10 minutes, room 217 transformed into something I can only describe as a meteorological impossibility. The gentle misting became steady rain. Not heavy rain, but unmistakable precipitation falling from an invisible source approximately 6 feet above the floor, covering the entire room. I was called in immediately and arrived to find Angela standing in the hallway, completely soaked from her attempts to comfort Elena. The rain in the room was so consistent that we had to bring in towels and place plastic sheeting over the medical equipment to prevent water damage. Dr. Chen, Angela said, water dripping from her hair. I've been a nurse for 23 years. I've seen patients with impossible recoveries, unexplained symptoms, medical miracles, but I've never seen anything that breaks the laws of nature like this. I entered the room wearing a rain jacket, an absurd precaution in a hospital, but necessary given the circumstances. Elena was sobbing, and with each tear she shed, the intensity of the impossible rain around her seemed to increase. That's when I witnessed something that shattered my understanding of reality completely. As Elena's grief reached its peak, the rain didn't just fall randomly. It began to form patterns on the floor, geometric shapes, almost like crop circles, but made of water on linoleum tiles. Perfect circles, spirals, interconnected designs that no random precipitation could create. As if Elena's emotional state wasn't just generating weather, but intelligent weather that responded to her subconscious mind. I called Dr. Mitchell again, and this time her reaction was immediate. Michael, we need to contact the CDC. Whatever's happening in that room is beyond anything in medical literature. This woman isn't just sick, she's exhibiting phenomena that don't exist in nature. By dawn, Elena had cried herself to sleep, and the rain gradually diminished to its baseline misting. But the geometric patterns of water on the floor remained, slowly evaporating in impossible designs that defied every principle of fluid dynamics I'd ever studied. Within 48 hours of contacting the CDC, our small hospital became the center of an investigation involving meteorologists, physicists, medical researchers, and government officials whose departments I didn't recognize. Dr. Amanda Torres from the Centers for Disease Control arrived with a team of specialists and equipment I'd never seen before. They transformed Elena's room into a laboratory, installing sensors, cameras, and monitoring devices that measured everything from electromagnetic fields to subatomic particle activity. Elena cooperated with all the testing, though she seemed increasingly confused by the attention her sadness was receiving. She repeatedly insisted that what everyone was calling impossible had been happening to her since childhood. During emotional moments, the air around her would become heavy and wet. She'd learned to cry alone to avoid getting others uncomfortable. My grandmother called it llorar el cielo, crying the sky, Elena explained to Dr. Torres during one of their interviews. She said our family was blessed with the tears of angels, but I never understood why it made people afraid. The CDC team spent a week documenting Elena's phenomenon under controlled conditions. They could trigger the rain by showing Elena emotionally difficult images or discussing upsetting topics. They could measure its intensity, map its boundaries, and predict its duration based on her psychological state. But they couldn't explain it, not even theoretically. Dr. Torres pulled me aside on the 7th day of their investigation. Dr. Chen, I need to be honest with you. We've documented everything meticulously. The phenomenon is real, measurable, and reproducible, but it violates fundamental principles of physics in ways that our current understanding of science cannot accommodate. She paused, looking exhausted and deeply troubled. In 30 years of investigating unusual medical cases, I've never encountered anything that challenges the basic laws of nature like this. Elena Rodriguez isn't just a medical mystery, she's evidence that our understanding of reality itself is incomplete. The most disturbing revelation came from their psychological evaluation of Elena. She wasn't psychotic, delusional, or suffering from any identifiable mental health condition. She was a normal woman with an impossible ability that she'd learned to hide from the world because it frightened people. The question isn't whether this is real, Dr. Torres concluded. The question is, if Elena Rodriguez can make it rain indoors through emotional distress, what else is possible that we've dismissed as impossible? Word of Elena's case spread through medical channels, despite our attempts at confidentiality. Within 2 weeks, St. Mary's Hospital received inquiries from researchers, journalists, and medical professionals from around the world, all demanding access to the woman who controls weather. The hospital administration was overwhelmed. Dr. Patricia Hammond, our chief administrator, called an emergency meeting with the senior medical staff to address what she called an unprecedented situation with significant liability implications. Gentlemen, Dr. Hammond said, we have a patient who appears to be generating meteorological phenomena in violation of natural law. The insurance company is threatening to void our coverage. The state medical board is demanding an explanation. The media is camping outside our doors. But the most troubling development came from other medical professionals who began reporting similar cases they'd previously dismissed or buried. Dr. Robert Kim from Dallas Methodist contacted me directly about a patient who seemed to affect electronic equipment with her emotions. Dr. Lisa Chen from Austin Regional reported a man whose body temperature fluctuated impossibly based on his psychological state. Dr. Chen, Dr. Kim said during our phone conversation. Elena Rodriguez isn't unique. She's just the first case we couldn't hide or explain away. How many other patients have we misdiagnosed over the years because their symptoms didn't fit our understanding of what's medically possible? The question haunted me. In 15 years of practice, how many unusual cases had I attributed to psychosomatic disorders, malingering, or diagnostic errors because they challenged what I thought I knew about medicine and science? Elena, meanwhile, remained calm and cooperative despite the chaos surrounding her case. She seemed genuinely puzzled by the attention her ability was receiving. "I just want to go home to my family," she told me during one of our daily consultations. "I never meant to cause problems." The irony wasn't lost on me. Elena Rodriguez had been admitted for dehydration, a simple, treatable condition, but her presence in our hospital had precipitated a crisis in the medical community's understanding of what was scientifically possible. Dr. Torres approached me on her final day at the hospital with a disturbing proposition. "Dr. Chen, there's a research facility in Nevada that specializes in unusual cases that don't fit conventional medical understanding. They've offered to take Elena as a research subject with full compensation and care." The implication was clear. Elena would disappear from public view, becoming a permanent subject of classified research into phenomena that challenged our understanding of reality itself. Elena's discharge should have been routine. Her dehydration had resolved completely, her vital signs were stable, and medically speaking, she was ready to return home. But how do you discharge a patient whose presence defies the laws of physics? The research facility Dr. Torres mentioned sent representatives to meet with Elena and her family. They offered financial compensation, medical care, and housing in exchange for Elena's voluntary participation in ongoing studies of her unique condition. Elena's sister Maria was suspicious immediately. "They want to take her away and study her like a laboratory animal," she said during one of our family conferences. "Elena has a life, a job, people who love her. She's not a science experiment." But Elena herself seemed torn. The attention her case had received made it impossible for her to return to normal life. Journalists followed her family members. Her apartment building had been evacuated twice due to unexplained humidity problems. Her employer had placed her on indefinite leave, pending medical clearance. "Dr. Chen?" Elena asked me during our final consultation. "Do you think I'm dangerous? Are people afraid of me because I'm some kind of monster?" The pain in her voice was heartbreaking. Here was a woman whose only crime was possessing an ability that challenged our understanding of natural law, and she was being treated like a threat to society. I had to make the most difficult decision of my medical career. Do I recommend that Elena accept the research facility's offer, essentially condemning her to a life of scientific investigation? Or do I help her disappear back into normal life, knowing that her ability would continue to manifest and potentially create more public incidents? The choice was complicated by a disturbing phone call I received from Dr. Torres the night before Elena's planned discharge. "Dr. Chen, there are other facilities interested in Elena's case. Government agencies with less humanitarian approaches to unusual cases. If she doesn't voluntarily enter our research program, she may not have the option to make that choice much longer." The implication was terrifying. Elena Rodriguez had become too valuable as a living contradiction of natural law to be allowed to simply go home and live a normal life. That night, I made a decision that haunts me to this day. I helped Elena and her family arrange to leave San Antonio quietly before the discharge paperwork was processed, before the research facility could formalize their custody arrangements. I gave Elena my personal contact information and made her promise to call me if her condition worsened or if she needed medical attention. Then I watched her walk out of St. Mary's Hospital, knowing that I might never see her again, but hoping that somewhere she could find a way to live with her impossible gift without becoming a permanent research subject. 3 weeks after Elena's disappearance, the investigation into her case officially concluded with a report that satisfied no one. The CDC classified the incident as unexplained environmental anomaly, possibly related to unknown psychological factors. The hospital administration sealed Elena's medical records and implemented a policy prohibiting staff from discussing the case with external parties. But for those of us who witnessed Elena's impossible ability firsthand, life became a series of sleepless nights and unanswered questions. Angela Foster requested a transfer to pediatrics, saying she couldn't work in internal medicine anymore without thinking about Elena's room and the rain that defied physics. Tom Bradley, our head engineer, became obsessed with atmospheric research, spending his off hours studying meteorology and hydrodynamics, searching for some theoretical framework that could explain what we'd witnessed. He never found one. Dr. Mitchell retired early, 3 years ahead of schedule. In her farewell letter to the medical staff, she wrote, "After 30 years in medicine, I've learned that our understanding of what's medically possible is far more limited than we dare to admit. Some cases don't have explanations that fit our current scientific framework. As for me, Elena's case fundamentally changed how I practice medicine. I became more attentive to unusual symptoms, more willing to consider possibilities that don't appear in textbooks, more humble about the limits of medical knowledge. I also began receiving calls from other physicians reporting cases they couldn't explain. Dr. Sarah Collins from Phoenix described a patient whose wounds healed impossibly fast when he was emotionally content. Dr. Mark Rodriguez from Miami reported a woman whose blood pressure normalized immediately in the presence of certain musical frequencies. Dr. Chen, Dr. Collins said during one of our consultations, Elena Rodriguez opened a door that can't be closed. We're starting to recognize that there are patients whose conditions don't fit our understanding of biology, physics, or medicine. The question is, what do we do with that knowledge? I established an informal network of physicians willing to document and discuss cases that challenge conventional medical understanding, not for publication or research, but for our own sanity and professional development. We call it the Elena Rodriguez Protocol, a commitment to acknowledge and study medical phenomena that don't fit our current scientific framework. 6 months after Elena's disappearance, I received a postcard from Albuquerque, New Mexico. No return address, just a simple message. Doctor, thank you for believing. The rain still comes when I'm sad, but I'm learning to find joy even when the sky cries. ER. Oh, Elena Rodriguez disappeared from my life as mysteriously as she'd appeared, but her case continues to haunt my medical practice every single day. Because once you've witnessed something that breaks the fundamental laws of science, every unusual symptom, every unexplained recovery, every diagnostic mystery becomes a potential Elena Rodriguez moment. I've spent countless hours researching historical medical literature, looking for other cases of patients who exhibited impossible abilities. What I discovered disturbed me more than Elena's reign ever did. Throughout history, medical professionals have documented patients with abilities that defied scientific explanation. People who could affect electrical equipment, individuals whose emotional states influenced local temperature, cases of spontaneous healing that violated everything we know about cellular regeneration. But these cases were consistently dismissed, buried in obscure journals, or attributed to misdiagnosis and professional incompetence. The medical community has systematically ignored evidence that challenges our understanding of what's biologically possible, because acknowledging such evidence would require fundamentally reconsidering the nature of medicine itself. Elena's case forced me to confront an uncomfortable truth. Our scientific understanding of the human body and its capabilities is far more limited than we pretend. We've built an entire medical system on the assumption that we understand the boundaries of biological possibility, but what if those boundaries are arbitrary limitations we've imposed rather than absolute natural laws? The research facility that wanted to study Elena contacted me several more times, asking if I'd heard from her. Their persistent interest suggested that Elena wasn't the only person with impossible abilities they were tracking. How many Elena Rodriguezes are there in the world, hiding their gifts because they don't fit our narrow definition of normal human capability? I've become convinced that Elena represents something far more significant than a medical anomaly. She might be evidence that human consciousness and biology interact in ways that our current scientific paradigm cannot accommodate. If emotional states can generate localized weather patterns, what other impossible connections exist between mind, body, and physical reality? The most disturbing question of all, if Elena Rodriguez could make it rain indoors, and I witnessed it with my own eyes, documented it with scientific instruments, and verified it through multiple independent observers, then what else have we dismissed as impossible simply because it challenges our understanding of what science allows? Elena's case taught me that the greatest danger facing modern medicine isn't misdiagnosis or treatment failure. It's the arrogance of believing we understand the full scope of human biological potential, when the evidence suggests we've barely scratched the surface. 15 years in medicine taught me to trust data, evidence, and established scientific principles. But Elena Rodriguez taught me that sometimes the most important medical cases are the ones that force us to question everything we think we know about the human body and its impossible capabilities. I never saw Elena again after she walked out of St. Mary's Hospital that August night in 1993. But her case fundamentally changed not just my approach to medicine, but my understanding of what it means to be human in a world where the impossible sometimes becomes undeniably real. Where are you watching this from? What time is it? Because cases like Elena Rodriguez make you question everything you think you know about reality, about medicine, and about the hidden capabilities that might exist in every patient who walks through your hospital doors. If this case disturbs you as much as it disturbed me, leave a like so more people can hear about these unexplained medical mysteries that challenge everything we believe about science and medicine. And if you want to explore more cases that shattered my understanding of what's medically possible, subscribe and join this investigation into the impossible cases that medical professionals encounter but rarely dare to discuss publicly. Share this video with someone who questions what's really possible in our world, because Elena Rodriguez proved that sometimes the most important medical discoveries are the ones that don't fit in any textbook. Check out the playlist below for more documented cases that changed everything I thought I knew about medicine and the hidden potential of human biology. Because some medical records were never meant to have explanations that fit our limited understanding of what science allows.